Welcome to Pretty Lies and Alibis. Let's seek the truth and travel the long road to justice together. What you know, Alibis, welcome to another episode of Pretty Lies and Alibis. I'm Gigi. Hope you're having a good Friday, ready for a fun weekend. I've got 2 episodes possibly that I'll be putting out tonight and at least one more this weekend to get us caught up in the Michael Turney trial. I am a couple of days behind, but I'm getting there and it's starting to get interesting. A big breaking news story today was there was an arrest in the Gilgo Beach murders. Rex Heuermann was indicted for the murders of 3 women in Long Island, New York. A 4th woman's murder is being investigated. They were reported missing between 2007 and 2010. And I have the documents for his bail application on the website. That's prettyliesandalibis.org. One day next week, I'm going to go through that. I really want to follow this case very closely. I also have documents for Chad Doerman, who is the father that lined his 3 sons up and executed them in his front yard. His bill of particulars is on the website as well. If you look under case documents at the menu, both of those are there. Check them out. We'll go through them next week. This Michael Turney trial is taking a lot of time because I'm really trying to listen to the backstory as I'm listening to testimony, sort of switching off between the two. And it's given me a lot of insight into the trial itself, but also you realize so much is not being allowed in that really would provide motive for this case. So it's going to be an interesting one, especially when it goes to deliberations, because essentially right now, there's just no evidence directly against him. There's a lot of really weird stuff, but if you're looking at it from beyond a reasonable doubt, I think this could be a bit of a challenge for the state. It's going to be an interesting one to watch. I have my own theories, but innocent until proven guilty, and we'll see what the jury says. So I have a couple of thank yous. I have to give a thank you to Tina for this shirt. If you guys remember, Alec Murdoch was on the phone with his son Buster, and he was talking about betting on NFL games. And he was so excited that he won 3 cups of soup and 2 beef sticks. Well, one of our alibis, Tina, thought it was funny the way I kind of mimicked his voice. And so she sent me this shirt. So I appreciate it, Tina. Also, big thank you to Laura, one of my friends and alibis. She sent me and my girls a bunch of jewelry to kind of pick through and fight over, which has taken place. As you see, I won the fight over the green earrings. Thank you, friend. Love you to death. Also, thank you to Harry for your very generous donation. Appreciate you guys so much. Music fact of the day. Who is the only artist to ever refuse to accept the Grammy they won? That would be Sinead O'Connor. In 1990, she released her sophomore album, I Don't Want What I Haven't Got. That included the lead single, Nothing Compares to You, which was, to me, a vocal masterpiece written by Prince. The song was an instant hit. You've probably all heard it. But at the 1991 Grammys, she was supposed to sing the song, and she was nominated in 4 different categories. She won one of those categories for Best Alternative Music Performance, but she refused to take the Grammy. She said she felt the Grammys promoted false and destructive materialistic values of the music industry. She's never been a stranger to controversy. She was banned from Saturday Night Live for ripping up a picture of Pope John Paul II on there. And anyways, but that song right there, I think by far the best song to come out of the 90s if you put my feet to the fire and made me say which one I think was the best. All right, we're jumping right back into this Michael Turney trial. On the last episode, we heard from Sarah Turney, who is Michael's biological daughter, his only biological daughter that he had with Alissa's mother. So just a little recap on these family dynamics. It can get a little confusing when we're covering cases and we don't know the whole backstory. This is kind of one that people knew about way back when Alissa went missing. But as you know, these cases get cold. They fall out of the news. And then I've seen a lot of people say, whoa, I remember this case, had no clue there was an arrest. Michael Turney married Alissa's mother. He was not her biological father. Alissa had a half brother, John, that was also part of this blended family. Michael and Alissa's mom had Sarah together, who testified, and we went over that on the last episode. Michael had 3 sons from a previous marriage. So that's kind of the whole family dynamic there. The next witness did not want to be on camera. Her name was Sandra. I'm not even going to attempt her last name. It was hard to hear. She was a former coworker of Alissa's at Jack in the Box. She supervised Alissa for around 6 months, and Alissa worked after school from around 3 to 8 or 9. Apparently, in Arizona, if you are underage, you can only work up until a certain point in the evenings, and it's like 8 or 9 o'clock is that cutoff time where they have to be let go. Now, Sandra was initially interviewed back in 2008. If you remember, 2008, 2009 was when this case kind of had some new life breathed into it with the false confession of the killer in Florida. And then this case was reopened and re-examined. She also did a defense interview. She just doesn't remember when she did it. She said Alissa was a great employee. She was better than her peers, and you didn't have to give her a whole lot of direction. She was friendly with the customers and her fellow employees, and she never caused any trouble. She never saw any drug issues with Alissa, and she had met the defendant, Michael, who would come in while Alissa was working. Alissa introduced the two of them, and Michael would watch her from the parking lot at times while she was on shift. She knew two other people named Mike and Chris who also worked there. So after Alissa went missing and didn't show up for work, she called to check in. And at that time, Michael told her that he had found a note from Alissa saying she was running away. Alissa never came to get her paycheck, and nobody ever heard from her again, as we know. On cross, the police never came to talk to her back in 2001. She first talked to them again in 2008. She said she did not know Alissa very well. Their conversations were very surface level, but she did say Alissa had mentioned California to her and said she was saving her money to go there. She said Mike would come in all the time and talk to the different employees. The defense attorney asked if other people came to visit Alissa. The witness said her schoolmates would pop in. Mike came by a day or two later after Alissa went missing, but nobody there had heard anything or knew anything about her disappearance. He did come in several times after that first time he popped in there. The defense talks about her seeing Michael in the parking lot and asked, is it possible he was just there to pick her up from work? And she said, of course it's possible. She didn't know Alissa very well. Their conversations were very much on a surface level, but she did say Alissa had mentioned in the past saving up her money to go to California. She's asked if other people would come into the restaurant to visit Alissa, and she said her schoolmates did, or friends of hers. They also talk about a guy would sometimes stop by to see her. One man stood out to the witness, but when asked, she really can't remember what made him stand out 20 plus years later. They talk about Mike, who is a shift manager who worked nights. He had to be over 18 to do so. She doesn't remember any conversations or issues between Alissa and Mike. On redirect, she said she doesn't remember anybody that caused her concern that came to visit Alissa while she was working. There were no jury questions. The next witness is Charity Robinson. That was her last name when she knew Alissa. Her last name is different now. She met Alissa through a mutual friend who brought her to Charity's 16th or 17th birthday party, and they just hit it off. They met when Alissa was a freshman and Charity was a sophomore. Alissa got very close to Charity's family as well. They hung out a lot. They were very close. She said Alissa was protective, funny, kind, and sweet. One thing that still sticks out is if she loved you, she would brag about you to everyone she knew. And she talked about her siblings to Charity. She saw Sarah and Alissa interact. They were just typical sisters. They would spat back and forth, don't take my hairbrush, get out of my room. But there was also a lot of love there. Alissa talked about Sarah a lot and had kind things to say about everybody that she loved. Alissa was closest with John as far as her brothers were concerned. Now, John is her biological half brother. The other brothers are stepbrothers. He was the one she confided in. Michael would bring Alissa to and from her Charity's house. She visited their house a couple of times, and her interactions with Michael were very short. Alissa went to her house. Alissa would go to Charity's house very often, and she preferred that, as you can imagine, because life at home was not happy for Alissa, it seems. If Michael was driving them to the mall, she said he would tell Alissa his expectations of her while she was there away from him. And she also saw the phone recorder in the house. She knew the phone calls were being taped. She did not know about the VHS surveillance tapes, but Alissa had described them to her. She just had not seen them. Alissa talked a lot about the conflicts she had with Michael, and she didn't complain about anyone else on a regular basis. In the months leading up to Alissa's disappearance, they were just forbidden to hang out together. They send the jury out and they're objecting to some hearsay. The defense says this is a specific motion in limine, and the judge ruled this can't come in. They can ask if they were hanging out, but not why they could not. So the defense had a huge problem with her saying that Michael had forbid the two of them from hanging out, which you'll see later kind of becomes a pattern with him. He sort of removes people out of Alissa's life, it seems, when she gets too close. It's a really creepy relationship, and the backstory is really fascinating. I totally encourage you to look up Sarah Turney's podcast. The very early episodes focus solely on this case. There are audio interviews with other family members, and there were a lot of things that weren't allowed to come in this trial that I really think kind of support motive in this case, which is why I think this is going to be a very interesting deliberation to watch. The defense reads that Michael forbids Alissa from seeing Charity. He said the state violated the court order that couldn't come in. And the judge asked, well, what did you anticipate her answer to be? And the state says our relationship had stopped and we weren't spending time together. The judge asked if they've told the witness that she can't say Michael forbid them from being friends. He asks if there's a way to ask that does not run over the judge's ruling. The defense, of course, asked for a mistrial, and they're denied. The judge tells the defense there's no point in asking him to strike without the jury present, but you can ask when they're here. So they get back at it, and the jury is back in. Charity says they didn't see each other regularly for 10 months before Alissa disappeared. Alissa would send her snail mail letters. Charity, however, did not write back. She didn't elaborate why, but I would get the feeling that probably Alissa didn't want her to, because no doubt her dad probably would have gotten those letters and read them. If she was near her house, she would pop in to Charity's or stop by Charity's work. She heard Alissa was missing after somebody saw her picture on a flyer. Then Michael called her house and spoke to her mother and told her that Alissa was missing. Charity had no way to contact Alissa. She would always wait for Alissa to reach out to her. Over the years, she's done Google searches looking for anything about Alissa. She did connect with Alissa's brother John on MySpace years ago, and that was the end of direct. So on Cross, you saw her regularly until the end of Alissa's sophomore year. You last saw her 6 months before she ran away, and Charity says she came to very briefly visit her at work at some point. Now, Charity gets a little heated, not heated, but just snippy with the defense. It was fun to watch. You describe Alissa as loving, but you also told Detective Anderson she could be mischievous. She said yes, but not in a harmful way. You said she was boy crazy. Charity says, I think every 16 or 17-year-old girl is boy crazy. Defense says, you said she was a party girl and liked to go out. And Charity says, I don't know. We really didn't have the means to go out. The defense asked, did you call her a space cadet? And Charity very smartly says, maybe after we smoked a joint. And then she kind of looked over at Michael. There were times she cut her eyes over at Michael in what is non-verbally just discussed. She's asked, did Alissa talk about future plans? You said she didn't and lived in the moment. And Charity said, I need more context, but she did speak to me about future plans. The defense says Sarah got positive attention, Alissa got negative, and she says that's correct. The defense says Alissa did get positive attention when she was behaving, and Charity says that's an opinion. The defense says, is it possible the negative attention is because she was misbehaving? And Charity says, I don't believe so. The defense asks, was she doing drugs? Charity says, I don't believe so. The defense says, was she drinking? Don't believe so. Sneaking out? I don't know about that. Doing poorly in school? I don't know about that either. Here's the thing. They bring her grades in later. She wasn't doing poorly in school. The thing with Michael that's so weird is that he puts this stumbling block into pretty much every relationship that's not with him. He does it with her friends. He does it with her boyfriend. He did it with her little sister, Sarah. And then he gaslights, and he says that she has all these problems and is just a terrible kid. But as you go through the testimony, you realize Alyssa really was just kind of a typical teenager who experimented with a few things here and there. She was boy crazy. If I'm going to be arguing against her character, which is really all the defense is doing, is trying to point her out to be this huge problem child, show me some arrest records. Show me where she's constantly being sent to the principal's office and getting referrals, kicked out or expelled. None of that's come in. I don't think it will. I think that Michael tried to make Alyssa out to be this terrible kid that would run away. She was asked if she was informed of the contracts he had Alyssa sign, and she said yes. Are you aware of any contracts Michael had your parents sign? Which made me go, what? If some parent came to me and asked me to sign a contract about their kids, I don't think I would, because I think that you're setting yourself up for some trouble. Either you trust me to take care of your kid or you don't. But signing contracts to other parents when your kid's coming to visit is a little bit off. And Charity said to that, he attempted to get them to sign a contract. They did not. The defense says, were you present for that conversation? You only know what was said from your mother? She says, yes. There was no redirect. There were no jury questions. And now it's time to hear a word from our sponsors of the week, EasyCanvasPrints.com and KOSAS. If you're looking for the perfect heartfelt gift for a loved one, Easy Canvas Prints is the way to go. Canvas prints can be customized, and they're a unique and meaningful way to show someone that you care. Maybe you want a quality canvas print for the perfect family photo or that amazing vacation picture you took. Canvas prints are not only visually stunning, the quality is top-notch with hand-stretched canvases over durable wooden frames. Their state-of-the-art printing technology ensures vibrant colors, sharp details, and long-lasting quality. The coolest part, the canvases come ready to hang on your wall. I have my logo printed, the colors are stunning, and it's here hanging in my studio right now. Ordering your custom canvas print is a breeze. All you do is visit easycanvasprints.com and upload your favorite photo. You can customize the size, borders, and even add a custom wooden or metallic frame to create a unique piece of art. Don't wait to elevate your home or office decor with a custom canvas print. Visit easycanvasprints.com/prettylies for a special offer for my listeners. Get unlimited 16 by 20 canvas prints for only $14.99 each. Again, that's easycanvasprints.com/prettylies. I've been using KOSAS for over a month now, and I love how their makeup gives me a natural look without caked up under eye concealer or foundation that looks painted on. KOSAS makes clean makeup for skincare freaks. Their complexion products are actually proven to make your skin better. They're dermatologist tested, safe for sensitive and acne prone skin, and hypoallergenic. KOSAS Revealer Concealer is not your mom's concealer. It's really creamy, weightless, and it's a total multitasker. It's a concealer, eye cream, and spot treatment in one. Revealer Concealer is packed with active skincare ingredients. It offers creaseless medium coverage with a smooth, radiant finish that looks just like your skin, just brighter, more even, and healthier. Take the 5-step shade finder quiz to find your perfect match. So don't choose between wearing great makeup and taking care of your skin. Right now, KOSAS is offering my listeners 15% off your first purchase of $50 or more when you go to KOSAS.com/whattheworld. Go to KOSAS, KOSAS.com/whattheworld for 15% off your first purchase of $50 or more, plus free shipping. That's KOSAS.com/whattheworld. So now we get to John Turney. Alissa was his sister through their mother. This is her biological half-brother. His mom married Michael when he was around 7, so he kind of estimated that time frame to be around 1986. Their mom died in 1993 from cancer. He had 3 stepbrothers from Michael. John moved out of the house around 1997. He would have been around 17 or 18 at that time. He said he and Alissa were very close, and he said, I was their big brother. And John said he got along with Michael. He still spent time with Alissa after he moved out. It got to be less, but she would confide in him whenever she had problems with what was going on in her life. She actually moved in with him for a short period of time, just a few weeks. He was living with one of Michael's sons, whose name is Michael Seth. She went back to live with Michael after a few weeks, and John said he wouldn't call Alissa a problem child. She had her struggles, but I don't think she was a problem child. He knew that she occasionally smoked marijuana. he saw her smoke it, and he doesn't know of any other drug use aside from that. Sarah and Alissa were like normal siblings, normal stuff, but ultimately Alissa loved Sarah very much. He saw John and Alissa together, John meaning her boyfriend, John. He said her boyfriend was a typical teenager. Nothing stood out to him as concerning. And he said, I can be critical as an older brother. And he kind of laughed saying that. So there were no red flags to him about her boyfriend at the time. If John needed to call Alissa, he would call the landline or just go over to the house. So remember back in 2001, there was maybe MySpace or AOL. It was very early in the internet phase. It wasn't as big as it is now. Cell phones were very basic. A lot of them didn't have internet access, if any at all. In fact, Alissa had a Nokia, which is just that straight phone. Either you had that or you had the flip phone. So it wasn't quite as easy, even in 2001, to get in touch with people because cell phones weren't super common in 2001. Alissa had a ferret, and he can't remember if she had it when she went missing. The state asks if he was aware of surveillance, and he said he was made aware of the video surveillance after he moved out. He didn't see or know about it when he lived in the house. He said he probably knew about the phone recorder, but it's pretty vague. She came to live with him due to turmoil in the house, and he said that Michael and Alissa just needed a break from each other. Michael was the one that told him Alissa had run away. John said he went to the house, and Michael asked him to get in touch with all of Alyssa's friends that he personally knew. He said he last saw Alissa a couple of weeks before she disappeared, and they were still very close at that time. John and Alyssa's aunt from California passed away. John was closest to this Aunt Lynette. He isn't sure how much contact Alissa had with her, but he remembers looking over some videos to see if there were any evidence of Alissa leaving the house. Michael said the videos didn't show her leave. He was also told about that call from California that allegedly came from Alissa. He didn't know what was said. He knows that Michael was trying to get the phone information of where it was from and the phone number. John had one interview with Detective Summershoe in 2008 or 2009. So on cross, Miss Hicks is up for the defense. They go through those family dynamics again. He adopted you both, and you and Alissa called him dad, and he said yes. Defense says, you told police Michael didn't treat you and Alissa any differently, and he said that's correct. You said Michael went out of his way to make sure you and Alissa were happy, and he says yes. After his mother's death and his brothers moved out, Michael was left to raise the girls on his own as a single dad. He told investigators Mike was unsure how to raise daughters after the boys moved out. He said his dad was stricter with the girls. They had a stricter curfew, who they were with. And the defense asked if girls can be more vulnerable with teen pregnancy and being assaulted. And he said yes. The defense says, you said to police you didn't see Michael's rules as excessive. John said it had been a long time ago since this interview, and he just doesn't remember. John said he got tired of Michael's rules and how strict he was. That's why he moved out at the age of 17. He said it was easier to find his own place and be able to make his own rules. He said at that point, Alissa would have been around 11 or 12 when he moved out. The defense says, you said Alissa and Sarah were constantly arguing, and he said yes. Defense, you described Alissa as carefree. She wanted to live her life the way she wanted to. She smoked marijuana every day. He said the frequency, I have no clue. The defense says out in the open and going to parties. He said, I don't know about parties. The defense says, you said Alissa went out and did what she wanted and was open sexually. And he says she wasn't quiet about it for sure. She confided in me a lot. The defense says you got upset with Alissa when she lived with you. She slept with your neighbor. Alissa was 15 and the neighbor was in his 20s, and Michael was aware of this. He says yes. The defense says she was a minor. That's statutory rape. And he says yes. The defense says you didn't like Alissa's boyfriend. And he says, I wouldn't say I didn't like him, but like any older brother, I was strongly opinionated. The defense says you told police Alissa was out of his league. He says, yes. And you said he was a loser? And he said, I don't remember that. Defense says your dad called you the night Alissa went missing thinking you had heard from her. And he said, that's right. The defense says he asked you to come to the house to see if anything was off. And he said, that makes sense. The defense says your dad had their surveillance, one inside the house, one outside. John said, I wasn't aware of the one inside until everyone else knew, which I'm assuming is after Alissa went missing. You were asked about the surveillance 7 years after Alissa disappeared. Detective Summershoe asked if Michael showed you surveillance the day she went missing. You said your dad probably showed you, and he said that's correct. Did you tell police Alissa knew anything about the cameras in the house? He said, I'm sure she found out. Defense says, she said she knew how to get out of the house without being seen. And he starts laughing and he says, I'm sure she did. She didn't wear your mom's necklace all the time, and it wasn't a modern piece of jewelry. And he said, that's correct. Remember, she left that behind, and Sarah testified she didn't think she would have left that if she were running away. They talk about what Michael said to John as far as the lengths he went to find Alissa. He said he was told by Michael that he spent over $50,000 in his efforts to locate Alissa. The defense said finding Alissa consumed him, and he said that sounds right. You said he took several trips to California. He said, I was told that. You told police your dad made a mistake focusing all his time on finding Alissa, and you thought he was going overboard with his search. John said, if that's what the interview said. And then you thought Michael should focus on Sarah, and he said, yes. You told police Alissa was prescribed Ritalin. She had a hard time sitting still, concentrating, no plans to go to college. And he said, not to my knowledge. I didn't say that. The defense said, you said she had a quick temper. Yes. Not very smart. He said, yes. And she would tell you that too. The defense says she didn't make great choices. He said it was nothing terrible, but she was known to make quick decisions. No inhibitions. He says, I don't know. Was she flirtatious? Yes. The victim blaming in this, y'all, makes my blood pressure rise. The thing is, I understand that Michael is entitled to a defense, but so far, their only defense has been that maybe Alissa was a little bit hard to handle. And by hard to handle, it doesn't even sound like out of control. It sounds like Michael was hyper-focused on her. You said she was kind of like your mom. If someone tickled her fancy, she would cling to them against better judgment. He said that's probably true. So on redirect, did you see her boyfriend as a threat? He said no. Who was telling you about Michael's efforts to find Alissa? And he said, Michael. Would you say Alissa was a good kid? He said, yes, we were alike. I didn't like rules, but I wasn't terrible either. Did she want freedom from you? He said, no, there were no jury questions. The next witness was James Turney, which is Michael's son. He has no biological relation to Alissa or her half-brother, John. He currently lives in Oregon and is an IT consultant. He lived with John when Alissa moved in after the marriage. In the 80s, when he married Alissa's mom, Michael was an electrician, and also before that, he was a deputy sheriff. James said his relationship with Alissa was like a sub-dad, so also with Sarah. If their parents weren't around, he would be sure that things were taken care of. When they moved back to Arizona after Alissa's mom died and his dad was sick, James would do parent conferences at school. So he really stepped up into that parent role. His relationship as an older brother, he would take them to the movies. He said he and Alissa pretty much got along. And at this time, she was around 10 or 11 when he was helping her with these things. He said he had to keep a closer eye actually on Sarah. Alissa was good with him when it came to following the rules. And after he moved out, he saw Alissa. And get this, he said when he was allowed to. I thought that was pretty big, when he was allowed to. This is a grown man. So they didn't elaborate on that. And I'm curious why. I think it wasn't allowed to come in with Charity. So maybe it wasn't allowed to come in with James. But that statement really stuck out to me, when I was allowed to. For a period of time, he didn't have direct contact with Alissa and Sarah. They did reestablish the relationship before Alissa disappeared. They would go to movies, they would go to Big Surf, and he was allowed to do outings like that with them. Alissa would talk to him about her friends and also problems at home. He said Alissa had a lot of friends, was very social, and she was definitely closer to her biological half-brother, John, as opposed to the rest of them. He met Alissa's boyfriend, John. He thought he was incredibly sweet and a really nice guy. The state talks about Michael not needing a wheelchair back in 2000, 2001. And James said his dad was incredibly capable physically, because you got to imagine the jury is seeing Michael now as a 75-year-old man in a wheelchair. So you have to picture him back in 2000, 2001, when the state's theory would fit that he killed her and disposed of her body. So that was the state's way of reminding the jury through a son he was very fit back when the alleged murder happened. He was aware of the recording systems in the house. They had them at every residence that they lived in as far back as he could remember. At the house where Alissa last lived, the camera he knew of was in the carport area. At the other residences, they learned how to turn off the phone recorder so they could talk to their mother or whoever they wanted without their dad recording it. I thought that was interesting that they would turn it off when they would talk to their mother. Pure speculation on my part, just thinking about all this. It makes me wonder if Michael really separated all these kids from anybody that had a strong bond with them. We know the aunt was estranged from the family, which would have been Alyssa's mother's sister. You see that John and James both indicate maybe they weren't allowed to see Alissa as often as they wanted. And then you have them turning off recordings when they want to talk to their own mother. So it just sort of fits into this little puzzle of who he was and how controlling he was. You have to wonder if the jury's starting to connect the dots with the control. And is that going to make a difference with pretty much zero evidence of a crime being committed? He said that system was always on whenever somebody called or a call was made. It automatically clicked on. Remember, according to Michael, no video or phone records from the day she disappeared or when she allegedly called from California. His dad called to tell him that Alissa had disappeared. He was living locally at the time. He said Alissa was gone and left a note. He went to the house maybe the next day. He went in the house. He doesn't think that he talked to Sarah about it. He said that he thought the relationship with Alissa and Michael was pretty good. James said he and one of his boyfriends went and hung up flyers in the neighborhood, but that's about it as far as their efforts to help find Alissa. He asked why he didn't do more, and he said his dad was consumed by it and was doing all these things. He was told about the call from California by his dad. He said Michael told him that there was nothing but static on the other end and that he was yelling into the phone until it hung up. Remember this. Later on, you're going to hear something a little different. He said there was no conversation on the phone, according to his dad. They send the jury back out. They're discussing a conversation Alissa had with James about a month before she disappeared, where she said Michael had put his hand on her leg and tried something with her. And that's why she wanted to get out of the house. The defense says they're hearing about this for the first time, and the defense said it's a Brady violation. The judge said the state can lead the witness, and on cross, the defense can address that. Alissa being unhappy before she left and wanted her freedom, he said, we've heard that a lot, the judge did. He said, but they can't bring up the touching incident. Now get this, James only knew that Michael picked Alissa up from school early the last day she was seen alive, around the time of the search warrant, which was about 7 years later. I kind of thought that was a big red flag. Like, why would you not tell your son, yeah, I picked her up, we had an argument, she left. In 2007, Michael told James that 2 electrical workers from the union actually killed Alissa. On cross, when Barbara got sick, Barbara being Alyssa's mother, he moved to California to help with Sarah and Alissa. James did. The defense goes through all the bad things that we've heard about Alissa that they brought up with every single witness. James told the investigator that Alissa was the most difficult of his siblings. The defense asked if Alissa was on Ritalin, and he said that he wasn't sure. She says, you said it in your interview, and he said, that's probably what I was told. He asked to listen to that interview. Every single witness that was a child or stepchild of Michael's has said, I was told. That's where all the information came from. And so he was able to craft everything he told everybody to suit whatever motive he had within him to portray Alissa in such a bad light. It seems like he consumed his time before her disappearance with Alissa in a very weird, unhealthy way. When did Michael tell you the union killed Alissa? And he said in 2007 in person. She asks if his first interview was in 2008, and he said he had kept in touch throughout the years with investigators, but that first formal interview was in 2008. The defense says you didn't think to tell them any more about the phone call. You would have known about the static. They go back and forth about the word static because they know Michael's version. The defense knows Michael's version is he heard Alyssa's voice, and we will hear later on exactly what Michael said Alissa said over that phone if it was her. On redirect, Ritalin, he said he never administered anything to her, no Ritalin when she was in his care, and his dad would have told him that she was on it, and he did not. There were no jury questions. The next witness is Jessica Lane. She met Alissa in 2000 in ceramics class at school. They became friends, and Alissa was happy and friendly, just wanted to have fun. She was a regular teenager. She talked about her family. And like everybody else, she says Sarah and Alissa were very typical sisters when they were together. Sarah wanted to do what Alissa was doing, which annoyed Alissa. I see that here all the time, y'all, all day, every day. Alissa and her boyfriend were just a typical teenage couple. Jessica said that she had been over to Alyssa's house before. When they were there, they would watch movies or play with her ferret. She knew of the video cameras, and she also knew about the phone recorder. She said she saw Alissa the last day she was ever seen alive, and she remembers Alissa had on a tank top and shorts and a pair of skater shoes, just those skateboarding kind of thick, chunky shoes. Jessica said they discussed their plans for the night before school let out. A friend was having a party, and Alissa and her boyfriend were going to come to that party. It was a half day because it was the last day of school. Michael was the one that told her Alissa had disappeared. She doesn't know if he called or if she called, but the call was early afternoon the same day, regardless. Michael said, "Where the F is she? I know she's with you. Where is my daughter?" Michael told her he was going to organize a search party and he would reach back out to her, but he never called. And when she reached out, she says he dismissed her. So she's on cross. You contacted Michael to help search for Alissa and he dismissed you. Do you remember telling detectives in 2009 that he called you asking if you wanted to help look? Jessica said, Michael said he was organizing a search party, but I never heard back, so I called him. She found the camera in the living room and she told detectives she was the one who saw a red light in the vent. The defense says, did you interview with the defense in the last few months? And she said, yes. They say, you talked about the camera. Did you say anything about the red light? And she says, I don't know right now. The defense says you vaguely remember the light. And she said, I just don't know specifics. The defense asks, you knew John Lackman, which was Alyssa's boyfriend. Can you describe their relationship? Jessica said it seemed like a regular relationship. The defense says, do you remember saying he made her cry a lot? She said no, but that's not surprising. Teenage girls cry a lot. I can vouch for this. The defense says, did Alissa like her job? And she says, I don't know. Do you remember her saying the people working there were stupid and she hated her job? She don't know. On the May 17th call, where Michael called to tell her Alissa was missing and then accused her of having Alissa, the defense says 4:30 to 7 is when you said you first talked to him. And she said probably more like 4 to 6. And then they asked, why do you think it was closer to this? And she said, I would have had to have gotten ready for that party that night. The defense says you told detectives you got a call from her and you were calling her back. She said there was a missed call on caller ID, and that's when Michael yelled at her. Did you see the flyer at Walmart and take it off the wall? She said yes. So I thought that was interesting. But on redirect, why take the flyer off the wall? And she said, I don't know. I was just angry about the whole situation. The next witness is Michael Stanley. He worked at Jack in the Box with Alissa. He was her manager and he trained her. He went over to Alyssa's house and he thinks he gave her a ride home that night. When they got to the house, they greeted her sister or dad and went into her room and shut the door. Michael told them to go to the couch. This was late to mid-spring of 2001. He left Jack in the Box due to medical complications due to spina bifida. It had nothing to do with this interaction with Alissa. He first found out Alissa was missing when he interviewed in 2009. So he didn't even know she was missing from 2001 to 2009. I thought that was interesting. On cross, you said you went over because you got off at the same time. What time was that? He said evening. It was no more than 2 times that he went over to that house. The defense says, do you remember being asked to leave because it was 1 a.m.? And he said, no. The defense asked, how old were you at the time? And he said, 19 or 20. The defense said, you said you were making out and heavy petting. And he said, yes. All right. So we're going to end here. And the next episode, we are going to hear from John, who is Alissa's boyfriend. And then we're going to hear from one of the lead investigators who picked this case up in 2008, all the way through to when there was the arrest. All right, guys, we'll see you soon. Have a good one.